Pratasmarami hridhi samspuradatmatattvam Sachit sukham paramahamsa gatin turiyam Yat sapnayagra sushuptam abaiti nityam Tad brahma nishkalam aham nacha bhuta sangha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Which means in the morning I remember the fact of the Atman which is shining in my heart, which is existence, knowledge and bliss, and which is the destination of the highest kind of sannyasins called Paramahamsa. And which Atman is the eternal witness of my three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So I am that Atman basically, and not just an aggregate of matter. So this is the lines of, you see, from him. And I chant this hymn today because we shall deal with a chapter of Swamiji's life, which is tremendously meditative, and he was moving away from the hectic public life and concentrating upon building up a few men and women in the Vedantic tradition. And he was meditating intensively. I am talking about his chapter of life beginning with regular classes in New York. And we are in the beginning of 1895, the year 1895. We have said previously that he was in the East Coast previously. And on the New Year's Day, he made a dash to Chicago and went to see the hills. Especially, we have seen that Madame Hill was like a mother to him. And he also stayed for a few days with the Lion family, which greeted him in the early days of the Parliament of Religions. When just the Parliament of Religion was opening, he was lodged there. So with the help of Madame Lion, he very soon moved, though he was in Chicago at that time, he very soon moved to a place of his own. That means he rented a small flat there for a few days. So this shows a beginning of a chapter. That means he was not liking so much to remain 24 hours in the house of wealthy and respectable people, because it was restricting him in two ways. His regime of diet he could not follow, and the timings, because when you are in a family, you have to follow the rhythm of the life of the family. And this put a constraint, because he had his hours of meditation, deep meditation, and sometimes certain people wanted to see him and talk to him to seek light and guidance, which was not very easy when you are the guest in someone's house. So all these reasons, he wanted independence and a little deep work, not just touring and giving lectures here and there, which was exhausting him. And he was not feeling living the life of a true sannyasin thereby, this constant travel back and forth. On 18th January, he came to New York, and We know that in November of 1894, he had already created a kind of Vedantic society, which was only some office bearers. It had not much. It was a infant society with not much work still, and Swamiji being away, see here and there, could not guide it. So it was like that, but an organization was there. So this New York organization tried to arrange meetings for him, etc., etc., but they were not experienced and it was a failure. Swamiji himself came and took matters into his own hands. Now, New York, you see, Swamiji has noted that New York people have a tenacity, a purpose unknown in any other city of the states. And he also noted that New York is the head, the hand, and the purse of the whole country. And in the 19th century, millions of refugees, especially from Ireland, Eastern Europe, and Southern Europe, was arriving in this city, millions of immigrants. And by this time Swamiji was there, it was already a polyglot city and a very important, the most important port of the states. Then this New York, you see, as I have said, that New York, the society was making some arrangements, so they could not do much. Whereas Miss Thursby, we have mentioned her earlier. She was a concert singer and happened to have a wonderful heritage in terms of money. And Miss Farmer, who organized these Greenacre religious conferences, they were arranging for parlor meetings. Parlor meetings means in their house they were inviting guests and their Swamiji would talk. This is parlor meetings. But regular classes independently, Swamiji had to wait because he had not yet a room of his own. So in the beginning, Guernsby, who was a homeopathic doctor and a very liberal man and who liked Swamiji, he was an old doctor and he lost his only son. So he met Swamiji and used to look upon Swamiji as his own son because they were already in bereavement, this old couple. And so in the beginning, after his arrival, he used to board and lodge at Guernsey's place. But within a few days, two rooms were rented. One room for Swamiji as his headquarters, and another room for his disciple Leon Landsberg. Leon Landsberg was a Jew, a Russian origin. He, by education, he was European. By citizenship, he was American. And he was searching for some ideal here and there. We do not know exactly whether he had anything to do with theosophy, but he had met in some parlor meetings in 1894 itself in New York, Swami Vivekananda, and was attracted towards him with a great devotion. So this Leon Landsberg was initiated as a brahmachari in the month of February, and he became for a time being Swamiji's right-hand man there, arranging many things for Swamiji. This was how, you see, then Swamiji moved to the two rooms, we have said they rented in the end of January, around 27th of January. In the beginning, Landsberg room itself used to be the kitchen because there was no other place where the gas stove could be installed, and there was a common kitchen in the house where these rooms were rented. And sometimes Swamiji would cook something there also. But the classes used to be held in his own room. He used to sit on the floor. In the beginning, the classes used to attract 3 or 4 people, but that was the very beginning. Since he was giving parlor meetings also, so people were gathering soon in great numbers, and this room used to be totally filled, all places. So we shall describe it later. Now, Swamiji had to, you see, lead a frugal life, very frugal life, but he was very happy because he could meditate enough here. Soon people, you see, felt this thing that his talk was full of spiritual fervor, and they used to be very much uplifted during his talk because he was meditating also a great deal in these days. In the Torah, there is a saying that the sacrificial fire should be kept burning all the time, not just when the animal is being roasted. It is always, it should be kept up. Now, this seems to be the idea that the devotion, etc., should be a constant thing. And this we find in many Jews. If you go to the history of Christian saints, especially in southern Europe, like Spain, etc., you'll find many of the great mystics, Christian mystics, had their origin in Judaism. So there is something in Judaism. That means I do not say that all Jewish people are very mystic. Rather, they are like the ordinary Brahmins of India, going by too much of rules. They observe rules, and what the books say you should do on such and such occasions. But there are Jews who are exceptions. Landsberg seems to be an exceptional man in the sense that he had this fire, at least for a time being. He was very close to Swamiji and became a kind of secretary to Swamiji in those early days of 1895. Now, on 20th of June, Swamiji gave the first of his series of lectures in the Ethical Society at Brooklyn. Brooklyn is one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. Boroughs means administrative units. So New York City is divided into 5 boroughs, and Brooklyn is one of the most populous areas. So there, in spite of that, the 20th of January was a day of strike there. But in spite of the strike, the whole hall was crowded. Uh, Now we have said that Swamiji's place was in a modest area. It was, you say, more than modest. That means the area was a poor quarter of the metropolitan city called Tenderloin, and this Tenderloin was full of saloons, brothels, dancing halls, etc. It was a red light district in which some order and decorum were established for a few years when one Presbyterian clergy was made a big controversy about the decorum of this place, and then police acted, and the corrupt politicians of the area, they were voted down for a time. And happily Swamiji was in this period there. That means there was some sort of decorum there and order there. And those who were, many of the friends of Swamiji warned him against hiring at such a place, and they said that it will be a failure finally, because ladies were more interested in spiritual life in India, because men folk, They are busy in earning money, and no lady would go to listen to Swamiji in such a quarter of the city. But Swamiji would say, who is the good person and who is the bad one? Everyone is the Lord. It is a form of the Lord. So in this regard, he himself is saying in a letter to Madame Bull, every one of my friends thought it would end in nothing. This my getting up quarters all by myself, and though no ladies will ever come here. Miss Hamlin, a friend of Mrs. Bull, especially thought that she and her right sort of people were way up from such things as to go and listen to a man who lives by himself in a poor lodging. But the right kind came for all that day and night, and she too, Lord, how hard it is for a man to believe in thee and thy mercies. Shiva, Shiva, where is the right kind and where is the bad, mother? It is all he. In the tiger and in the lamb, in the saint and sinner, all he. In him I have taken my refuge, body, soul, and Atman. This is the letter written to Mrs. Bull. And another very ardent disciple Swamiji got from the very beginning, she was Miss Waldo, called also Haridasi. This Waldo writes, the Swami was living very simply in New York, and his earliest classes were held in the small room he occupied, and in the beginning were attended by only 3 or 4 persons. But she adds, the classes grew with astonishing rapidity, and as the little room filled to overflowing, it became picturesque. The Swami himself always sat on the floor, and most of his audience likewise. This marble-topped dresser, the arms of the sofa, and even the corner washstand helped to furnish seats for the constantly increasing numbers. The door was left open, and the overflow filled the hall and sat on the stairs, and those first classes, how intensely interesting they were. Who that was privileged to attend them can ever forget them. The Swami is so dignified, yet so simple, so gravely earnest, so eloquent, and the close rank of students forgetting all inconveniences, hanging breathless on his every word. So it is how Miss Waldo is writing that soon it became a big success. And so thus Swami Vivekananda inaugurated his work in New York. 10. Many of you know who is 10. 10 is the name in our order given to Miss MacLeod. Miss MacLeod herself writes, on the 29th of January 1895, I went with my sister and heard Swami Vivekananda in his sitting room where were assembled 15 or 20 ladies and 2 or 3 gentlemen. So the very first week almost. And the room was crowded, all the armchairs were taken, so I sat on the floor in the front row. Swami stood in the corner. He said something, particular words of which I do not remember. But instantly to me that was truth, and the second sentence he spoke was truth, and the third sentence was truth, and I listened to him for 7 years. And whatever he uttered was to me truth. From that moment, life had a different import. It was as if he made you realize that you were in eternity. It never altered. It never grew. It was like the sun that we will never forget once we have seen. His power lay perhaps in the courage he gave others. He did not ever seem to be conscious of himself at all. It was the other man who interested him. When the book of life begins to open, then the fun begins, he would say. He used to make us realize that there was nothing secular in life. It was all holy. Always remember you are incidentally an American and a woman, but always a child of God. Tell yourself day and night who you are. Never forget it. That is what he used to tell us. His presence, you see, was dynamic. You cannot pass that power on unless you have it, just as you cannot give money away unless you have it. You may imagine it, but you cannot do it. Now, this Tantin also was privileged to have some rare experience. She herself told one of our monks later on that one day he was hearing Swami Vivekananda and he was talking about the Bhagavad Gita. And suddenly he says that he showed it with his fingers. He said, with my own eyes, I saw it, that Vivekananda himself transformed into Sri Krishna. And I found that Sri Krishna himself was preaching the Gita. So such experiences were there, and she was sensitive to it. And for 50 years almost, he served Vivekananda's mission in 3 continents. This Miss MacLeod. This Landsberger writes that he, Brooklyn, Swamiji first talk was about the ideals of womanhood. And then his next talk was an outline. He gave an outline of the Upanishads and the yoga systems. And they were highly appreciated, these things. But an unfortunate thing occurred in the parlor meeting held at Miss Thursby's place. As usual, in such parlor meetings, guests are invited and dignitaries come. There's one Presbyterian clergy who criticized something, Swamiji, and there was a tremendous fiery exchange between this priest and Swamiji, which disturbed even Mrs. Bull, who's from Boston, was there in this New York parlor meeting, and Miss Thursby. They all did not approve of this outburst of Swamiji, but Swamiji held his own head himself. Talk about this later when the news went to Mrs. Hill of Chicago. She also did not approve of this thing. But then she wrote a letter, Mrs. Hill, to Swamiji, to which Swamiji gave a reply. The reply, I'm part of it. I am very glad of your criticism, and I am not sorry at all. I am glad that you write about it just now because I have been giving a good deal of thought to it. In the first place, I am naturally sorry for these things. Perhaps that may disgust you, it may. I know full well how good it is for one's worldly prospects to be sweet. But when it comes to a horrible compromise with the truth within, then I stop. I do not believe in humility. I believe in samadharshittam, same state of mind with regard to all. The duty of the common man is to obey the commands of his God, society. The children of light never do it. This is an eternal law. One accommodates himself to surroundings and social opinion and gets all good things from the giver of all good, namely the society. The other stands alone and draws society up towards him. The accommodating man finds a path of roses, the non-accommodating one of thorns. But the worshippers of Vox Populi go to annihilation in a moment. The children of truth live forever. He write to Madame Hell. He also adds, the fight with the Presbyterian priest And the long fight afterwards with Mrs. Bull showed me in a clear light what Manu says to the sannyasin, leave alone, walk alone. This is also Buddha's, you see, there is a book, Sambahula, Sambahula Vikhu Vattam. In that, you see, Buddha himself is saying these lines, that if you find a person who is upright and amicable, then walk with him. If you do not find such a person, then walk alone, like the elephant in the forest. So these are the words. Now, uh, he continues in this letter, in one word, I have a message to give. I have no time to be sweet to the world, and every attempt at sweetness makes me a hypocrite. I'll die 1,000 deaths rather than live a jellyfish existence and yield to every requirement of this foolish world, my own country or foreign country. You are mistaken, utterly mistaken, if you think I have a work as Mrs. Bull thinks. I have no work under or beyond the sun. I have a message and I will give it after my own fashion. Later on, he understood that his reply to Madame Hell was very strong, who was almost like a mother to him in this foreign country. So he wrote a long poem to Madame Hell, to which Madame Hell also replied in a poem. And finally, Madame Hell says that, please forgive me in that say, for what I have written. Anyhow, now this bitterness was made up one side with Madame Hell of Chicago and another side of Madame Bull of Boston, and they became friendly. This constant mixing with the people, etc., etc., which exhausted him, created in him a desire to remain alone independently and to give his, and he was determined to make a dent in America by not by random lecturing, but by systematic classes to a few earnest souls, so that they can be prepared, they can assimilate Vedanta correctly. And for that, he was, as I have said, he was meditating intensely and then giving the lectures. Lectures used to be given normally from 11 to 1. Certain times it used to spill over a little. And everyone would listen with great attention to what is, because it was his talks were very inspiring at this period of his life. Then he was also in New York, as I have said, that he was moving away from these things, and he was giving these lectures. Now, what were these lectures? Previously, it was thought that they are all not noted down, etc., etc. But something has come down to us. We know now in what manner he was talking. I shall quote here from Miss MacLeod's witness. The highest good is the realization of the self. It is beyond sense, beyond thought. The real I cannot be grasped. It is the eternal subject and can never become the object of knowledge, because knowledge is only of the related, not of the absolute. All sense knowledge is limitation. It is an endless chain of cause and effect. This world is a relative world, a shadow of the real, still being the plane of equipoise where happiness and misery are about evenly balanced. It is the only plane where man can realize his true self and know that he is Brahman. This world is the evolution of nature and the manifestation of God. It is our interpretation of Brahman or the absolute, seen through the veil of Maya or appearance. The world is not zero. It has a certain reality. It only appears because Brahman is. When the delusion of this world is once broken, it will come back to us, but no longer will it hold any reality for us. We shall know it as a mirage. To reach beyond the mirage is the aim of all religions. To separate ourselves utterly from matter and all belief in the reality is true jnana. Absolute unity is the foundation of jnana yoga. This is called Advaitism. This is the cornerstone of Vedanta philosophy, the Alpha and Omega. Brahman alone is true, all else is false, and I am Brahman. The essence of Vedanta is that there is but one being, and that every soul is that being in full, not a part of that being. All the sun is reflected in each dewdrop. Appearing in time, space, and causality, this being is man as we know him, but behind all appearances is one reality. Unselfishness is the denial of the lower or apparent self. We have to free ourselves from this miserable dream that we are these bodies. We must know the truth. I am he. We are not drops to fall into the ocean and be lost. Each one of us is the whole, the infinite ocean, and will know it when released from the fetters of illusion. Infinity cannot be divided. The one without a second can have no second, all that is one. This knowledge will come to all, but we should struggle to attain it now, because until we have it, we cannot really give mankind the best help. The Jivan Mukta, the living free, alone is able to give real love, real charity, real truth, and it is truth alone that makes us free. This is not simply Vedanta, it is Vedanta expressed in modern language and with all the clarity of a soul who have had this experience. Swamiji had the first experience of it during his second meeting with Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar itself. He touched him and induced him. He says that everything around him was crumbling to pieces into atoms and molecules, and then he found that his ego sense was being pounded and he took fright. Then Sri Ramakrishna again touched him and said that we need not be in a hurry. All these experiences will come in time. So that was his first peep into this supra consciousness, say, reality. And he will have it through his meditation, austerity, and the grace of his guru later on within 4 years. He'll have it. So he could speak like an authority, and he was and certain times even in America this has happened. We know that once by the side of the Michigan lake, his mind was almost in the highest plane of samadhi when Sri Ramakrishna appeared before him and reminded him of his mission, and then he came back from that plane. You see, Swamiji's natural tendency of the mind was towards meditation into that line. Then again he will say, our real nature is all bliss, and all the pleasure we know is but a reflection, an atom of the bliss we get from touching our real nature. When everything has been thrown away, until what cannot be thrown away is reached, that is the self. Ask not for healing, for longevity, or prosperity. Ask only to be free. Comfort is no test of truth. On the contrary, truth is often far from being comfortable. If one intends to be really, if one intends to really find truth, one must cling not to comfort. It is hard to let all go, but the Jnani must do it. He must become pure, kill out all desires, and cease to identify himself with the body. Then and then only the higher truth can shine in his soul. Sacrifice is necessary, and this immolation of the lower self is the underlying truth that has made sacrifice a part of all religions. So he says that time and space only exist in us. We are only the permanent being. If a thing happens once, it can happen again. If any human being has ever realized perfection, we too can do so. If we cannot become perfect here and now, we never can in any state or heaven or any condition we may imagine. Do not pity anyone, look upon all as your equal, cleanse yourself of the primal sin of inequality. Equality is a sign of the free. Only sinners see sin. See not man, see only the Lord. So the Vedas assert in the plainest terms that man can and does transcend this sense-bound, frozen universe. He can, as it were, find a hole in the ice through which he can pass and reach the whole ocean of life. Only by transcending the world of sense can he reach his true self and realize what he truly is. So these are the passages, you see, notes taken from his classes in New York. At least we know that he talked on Gyara Yoga there. But in his parlor meetings, sometimes he would talk about other things, as we just say, India's different aspects of the Indian society, etc., etc. And from these classes, he would not charge anything. So he remained poor, and to sustain, to give this, because when the classes grew, he had to go, you see, downstairs to have a big parlor room for his classes. And to pay for these parlor rooms, he used to give these meetings outside on different subjects. And by that, he used to, because this class, since it was only on spiritual knowledge, he used to think that it is not correct to take money from it, it should be given free. So that is how he inaugurated work in America, and he was immensely happy during this period because he felt like being a true Indian sannyasin, because for 15 months at least earlier, in his own language, he was leading the life of almost a beast because he had not sufficient meditation. That is why he was saying like this. So, have you any questions? So you can have it now.
Now there is one question
Yes.
from Chitra. She's asking, which book currently is available as a compilation of the New York early lectures?
See, the best things are your Marie Louise Barks' New Discoveries, Swami Vivekananda in the West, New Discoveries. This is the series. She has done the extensive discoveries. After him, to my knowledge, one of the persons who is almost my friend, Mr. Asim Chaudhuri, he has done something further research into certain places, etc., where he went. But the main job is your Sister Gargi. She's called Marie Louise Barks. Sister Gargi's main, you see, work. I met her only once in Belur Math, Sister Gargi. That maybe almost maybe 20 years back. Any other question?
For the time being, no other question.
Okay.
I just would like to ask you maybe something regarding the difference between the sessions Swamiji gave in New York as parlor sessions and
Yes.
the lectures he gave more publicly. So what was the difference in the content?
Content means, you see, content parlor lectures were not always on secular subjects, but many times it used to be on secular subjects because people, you see, ordinary people, all people are not tremendously interested in highly spiritual things. You see, they are not ready for it. So, and Swamiji required money. And since he wanted to be independent, these lectures, these parlor lectures, there used to be a price for it. And with that, he used to support his spiritual job. So the parlor lectures were not necessarily always on spiritual subjects. Like, for example, different, you say, people used to ask those days about deeply about Indian society because they have heard that it is a poor country, it is a caste-ridden country, and missionaries had different propagandas in the sense that Hindu women after childbirth they go to the river to throw their children, especially the girls, into the river. So such things were there, many such, and you see, they could not understand. You see, even why foreigners, even many Indian reformers, including poet Rabindranath Tagore, never understood the utility of puja. During his first meeting with Mahatma Gandhi, poet Tagore requested him to utilize his great popularity among the Indian masses to preach against the puja system, which Mahatma Gandhi did not do. Being a staunch Brahmo thinker, you see, when Swamiji was lecturing in 1893 in Chicago, that time poet Tagore was the secretary of the Adi Brahmo Samaj. His mind was too much into it. Those who know Bengali, they remember his lines. রথযাত্রা লোকারণ্য মহাধুমধাম যাত্রীরা লুটায়ে পথে করিছে প্রণাম রথ ভাবে আমি দেব পদ ভাবে আমি মূর্তি ভাবে আমি দেব হাসে অন্তর্যামী. There is this Ratha Yatra, this Ratha festival, and their pilgrims, innumerable pilgrims, and they are prostrating on the road. And the chariot thinks that I am the Lord to whom this devotion is being addressed. The road thinks I am the Lord to whom this is addressed. And the image inside the chariot thinks that I am the Lord, while the indweller is smiling. So he never understood the utility of puja. So when such is the case of an Indian, what to speak of foreigners? And because of the second commandment in which people of Abrahamic religions believe, there is a tremendous opinion against it. This puja, this Abrahamic people, and also the reformers within Hinduism think that it is, for example, men like their famous men, this Agnivesh, etc., etc. They decry it day and night.
So Patrick is asking a question.
Yes.
What is the effect of modern America from his mission?
Modern America, you see, modern America from his mission, at least as I have mentioned in the last time, Swamiji gave his best during his second trip when he worked mainly in the West Coast. And today we see in the West Coast that at least in the West Coast there are at least 50,000 Americans who are practicing meditation very intensely. This is not a big thing in a country of so many millions, but it is something, you see. The best people are always few in number in any society, but numbers, they do not see, their power is much more. Gradually and gradually, it will infiltrate. Already there is a hue and cry in America, for example. There are people who are saying that our identity is being lost. We are no longer seen as WASP. WASP means white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. This is our central identity, WASP, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. There are non-white people. There are people who believe that all religions are valid. This is a widespread belief nowadays. And the erosion in the dogmas, faith in the dogmas, that is another thing. It is invading the whole Western world. So this is the effect, you see, as Swamiji said, the truth is like a corroding substance. It will, you see, make its dent everywhere. So that is happening everywhere. So you do not see it, but it is gradually, you see, on the basis of dogmas. What is dogma? Dogma means a truth which cannot be proved, whose basis is in the holy books or in the interpretation of holy books, but which the adherents of this religion wants to impose upon others with great zeal. That is dogma. Once in a meeting, I remember, you see, it was an interreligious meeting. I was speaking against these dogmas. Then the Muslim representative replied that if you take away dogmas, all religions fall. There will be no religions. I said a few moments ago, you are talking about love. This love is not a dogma. I said, then he kept silent.
So we have one more question from Zoki. Dear
Yes.
Swamiji, the same state of mind that Swami Vivekananda mentioned in one of his letters, is that the same state of mind, the Atman realization?
It is more than the Atman realization. Atman realization is first you understand that you are basically the Atman. But the second step is that you then feel that this is the same case with all the human beings you are confronted with. So then comes Samadarshitva, as the Gita says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gabihastini Shuni Chaiva Swapakecha Brahmana Samadarshina, Pandita Samadarshina, which means that in a Brahmin who has both knowledge and humility, and in the cattle, in animals like elephants and dogs, and the low caste man who eats the dog, that means the Chandala caste, they eat flesh of dog. In respect of all these persons, the real man of knowledge, they are same-sighted, which you see actually in the Holy Mother. He's speaking of this Muslim, unlettered Muslim, who was a dacoit even, and mother's niece was throwing chapatis on his plate from a distance. Mother rebuked her, said that if you cannot do it, give it to me, I shall do it. Remember, Amzad is as much my son as Sharat is Swami Sarvadananda. He's equating Swami Sarvadananda with Amzad. This is same-sightedness.
I think this is all regarding questions, Swamiji. So we
Yes.
can go to the next step for
Okay.
meditation.
Okay. Meditation for the is the first subject of the meditation is this Swamiji's heated exchanges with the priest. This is as a model. That means when someone is attacking the truth and holding on to his dogma, then the man of courage, he shouts at him. We see it in Sri Ramakrishna even. Once Sri Ramakrishna was dancing, etc., and one of his affluent disciples offered him a very costly garland, which Sri Ramakrishna threw away in a distance, because he felt that there was much pride in this man, that I am offering such a costly thing. So they do it like that. So let us meditate on this. This is our first subject. Our second subject of meditation will be this Swamiji's this giving of lecture and his inspiration. Inspiration in the sense we have talked about Miss MacLeod's vision once, that he saw Swamiji as Sri Krishna, and then there was another poet, Wheeler Wilcox, Ella Wheeler Wilcox. This Wilcox would say that I attended him for several times his classes, and he's so pure, so simple, and so spiritual that I think that he's the incarnation of some great soul, maybe of Jesus, maybe of Buddha, she says. And she would say that 1895 winter was a very bad winter, not only weather-wise, banks failing, and stocks were going down, and people did not know what would happen. And her husband was one such person. After listening to Swamiji's classes, he would go out in the winter and say, "It is all right. There is nothing to worry." He said, "We shall overcome it." So much courage he could instill in these frustrated people. You see. So this inspirational aspect of Swamiji giving spiritual talks, this should be our second subject of meditation. Now our third subject, it will be a little difficult, but try to do it. You see, this truth of which Swamiji is talking about in the context of Jnana Yoga. This truth has been likened in our scriptures like that there is actually a rope. We are seeing instead of the rope the snake. So there is actually, for example, this truth is there. Instead of that, we are seeing not one truth, we are seeing many truths, many objects we are seeing, and they are fragile in the sense perishable. We do not think that there is an imperishable aspect in it. We think everything is perishable, including ourselves, that we shall die one day. We think like this. So that is an illusion where the principal truth is this. Certain times it is also, for example, illustrated like this, that you see many objects made of clay, a dish, a glass, a pot. These are different things, but what is underlying truth is this is all clay, and you have given a shape, and then to that shape you are giving a name. So, but the underlying truth is similarly, we are confronting different things in the world, etc., both living and non-living. But the underlying truth is this Atman, which is nothing but another aspect of God, the formless aspect of God, which is there. As Sri Ramakrishna himself saw in the Sanctum Sanctorum in the Kali temple, he says that he saw that the image, puja vessels, the marble floor, the wooden threshold, everything is your Chinmay. That means he saw some light in them. And so like a madman, I began to shower petals in all directions. So let us try to think of this ultimate reality with this help of these imageries. Okay.
Okay, Swamiji, thank you very much.
Pranam, Swamiji. Thank you.
Okay. Namaste. Namaste.